Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Patience. In today's video I'll be sharing with you guys how I made this beautiful layered mesh notched collar blazer mini dress with a pointy shoulder sleeve. Before we get started, kindly click the subscribe button. If you have done that, let's get into it. I'll be using 3 yards of crepe fabric and 10 yards of tulle. So you can use a mesh, a soft mesh for this. And I'll be drafting on this pattern paper. The first thing I'm going to do is to mark 4 inches from the edge of the fabric this way for my lapel allowance and fold it in this way. I'll also mark 6 inches from the upper part this way for the collar. I will be starting my measurements from this line, which is the shoulder line. I'll mark half of my shoulder width, which is 8 inches. I'll add ½ inch for sewing allowance, that's 8.5 inches. From the 8.5 inches, I'll come down by 1 inch and I'll mark 3 inches for the neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth. I'll curve the neckline this way and also slant the shoulder. From this 1 inch, I will mark 8 inches for my chest line. In order to get a straight line, I will mark from the shoulder to the 8 inches, which is 9 inches. And I'll bring down the shoulder measurement to the chest line and connect it to the 1 inch this way. Now I'll mark quarter of my bust circumference plus 1 inch for side seam. I'll mark the midpoint of this line and I'll go in by 3/4 inch for the front arm side. Using my armhole curve, I'll curve the arm side this way and I'll mark my shoulder to bust point and I'll mark my shoulder to half length, which is 16 inches. I'll be adding the bust dart to this dress, so you can use 2 inches or 1 inch for the bust dart. I'll be using 1 inch. So my shoulder to half length is 16 inches plus the extra 1 inch for bust dart, that is 17 inches, and I'll add ½ inch for sewing allowance, that is 17.5 inches. I'll mark the bust circumference on the bust line. My bust span measurement is 8 inches. I'll be marking half of my bust span measurement, which is 4 inches plus ½ inch, that is 4.5 inches. I'll mark that on the waistline and also on the bust line, and I'll connect the points. So as you can see, I am using a pencil to do this because I am going to reduce the dart later on. And I'll be using 1 inch for my dart, so I'll mark ½ inch on both sides and create my darts. And I'll mark quarter of my waist circumference plus this 1 inch for that and 1 inch for side seam, and I'll connect the points. Now I'll be marking my bust dart on the side seam. So on the bust line here, I'll come down by 1 inch and I'll connect it to the waist dart this way. So if you leave it this way, you realize that when you are joining the darts, you have shortage of fabric. To fix that, I'll mark the midpoint of this 1 inch, that is ½ inch, and I'll go out by ½ inch and connect it this way. So I'll connect the bust circumference to the ½ inch down to the waist this way. So after I take in my dart on my fabric, I'll go ahead and trim out the ½ inch. Now from the shoulder line, I am going to mark where I want the lapel to stop. As you can see, it stops somewhere close to the bust, so I'll be using 10 inches for that. I'll go ahead and mark 10 inches. From the 10 inches, I'll go out by 1 inch. I'll also mark the 1 inch on the waist line and connect it this way. From the neck depth here, I'll go out by 1.5 inches and connect the 1.5 inches to the 1 inch this way. From this 1 inch, I'll be making a slant line past the neck width to the collar extension this way. And on this line, I'll be marking the back neckline. So for the back neckline, I'll be using 3 inches by 1.5 inches. I'll go ahead and cuff that out. And I'll measure round. So what I have here is 4 inches. I'll go ahead and measure the 4 inches on this slanted line. And I'll make another slanted line this way. As you can see, I am not placing my ruler this way. I am making it a bit slanty. And I'll mark my collar width, which is 3 inches. I'll be using 3 inches. Now from the neck depth here, I'll go in by 1/2 inch. And from this 1.5 inches here, I'll go up by 3/4 inch. So I'll connect the 1/2 inch to this 3/4 inch this way. And from this 3/4 inch, I'll make a curve to this 3 inches. So that is it for my collar. If you like, you can go out by 3/4 inch and make a curve this way, just to reshape the collar. So these arrows are indicating the notch on the collar. Now to create this underbust cup on the dress, for my shoulder, I'm going to mark my shoulder to underbust, which is 14 inches. I'll come down by 1 inch, that is 15 inches. I'll mark that on the side seam this way, and I'll connect the 15 inches to this 1 inch here, making a curve this way. So on the fabric, I am going to take in the bust dart and the waist dart. That was why I used my pencil to draw the waist dart. So now I am going to be redrawing the waist dart. So I'll mark the 4.5 inches on this curved line. My dart is going to stop here. So I'll go ahead and redraw the dart. So that is it for the front pattern. So this is my collar. I'll be cutting ×2 on fold. So I'll be taking in the bust dart and the waist dart on the fabric. So I'm going to be cutting out this part. I'll be cutting ×4 on each part of the front piece. 2 for the lining and 2 for the fabric. That is it for the front pattern. I'll cut out the collar. Like I said, I'll be cutting it out on fold, adding 1/2 inch for sewing allowance round, and I'll be cutting out ×2 for the fabric and the lining. Remember, I've added hemming allowance and side seam already. So now I am going to be adding 1/2 inch just on this part and also on this part to join it back together. So 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here, round the neck down to the shoulder. So I'll be cutting out ×4 on each of the front piece for the lining, 2 pieces for the lining and 2 pieces for the fabric. So for the back piece, I've gone ahead to mark my shoulder line. I've also marked my chest line, and I've curved the arm side. I came in by 1/2 inch for the back arm side, and I used 3 inches by 1.5 inches for the neck, like I said. Now I'll mark my shoulder to half length, which is 16 inches. That is my actual half length, and I'll add 1/2 inch, that is 16.5 inches. Remember, on the front piece I used 17 inches because of the bust dart. I'll also be marking my bust pan measurement, which is 4 inches. I added 1/2 inch for sewing allowance, that is 4.5 inches. Mark that on the waist and the chest line. I'll connect it this way. I'll also be using 1 inch for dart, so I'll mark 1/2 inch on both sides and create my dart. And I'll mark quarter of my bust circumference plus 1 inch for side seam. I'll also mark quarter of my waist plus 1 inch for that and 1 inch for side seam. So that is it for the back piece. I will cut it out. So I'll be cutting out ×2 for the unfold for the fabric and the lining. I've done that. I added ½ inch on the shoulder and the neckline, and I cut it out on fold. I cut out ×2 like I said, and I've also marked my darts, as you can see. So I'll be using the fabric for the lining. You can use a lining just for the back piece. I've also cut this out on my fabric. I cut out ×4. So on the dart, I also came down by ½ inch and connected it to the sides, just like I did on the bust dart, just to create space. So when I join it back, when I join the dart, I'll trim it out. So I've added the ½ inch round, as you can see. I cut out 4 pieces and I've marked my darts, and I ironed an interfacing. Also on this part of the front piece, I've added the ½ inch just on this part like I said, and I cut out ×4. So I'm using 2 for the fabric and 2 for the lining. I've also gone ahead to mark my dart, as you can see, and I ironed an interfacing. So if you're wondering how I marked my dart, I placed my pattern this way, aligning the side seam, and I mark both points of the dart and connected it with my ruler. And on the back piece, I just marked the 4.5 inches from the midpoint. So I've joined the dart on both pieces of the back piece, as you can see. Also on all the pieces of the front piece, I've gone ahead to join the darts. I'll keep 2 aside for the lining. I'll be using this other 2 as the fabric. I'll do the same thing here. I'll keep 2 aside for the lining, and I'll be using this as the fabric. To join them together, I am going to place the right sides this way and pin it down. So I'll be joining by the ½ inch I added for sewing allowance. I've done that, as you can see, and I ironed opened. So I'll trim it this way. I'll also trim out the ½ inch I added on the hem, also on the side seam. And I'll ensure that this underbust area are aligned, as you can see. I'll be placing the fabric and the lining together this way, the right sides together this way. And what I'm going to do is I am going to bring out my pattern. Remember, from the neck depth, I marked ½ inch in this way. So from the ½ inch, I am going to measure to the edge of the pattern, and that is 2 inches. Okay, so I'll be marking the same 2 inches on the fabric. I remember I added ½ inch for sewing allowance, so I'm going to mark 2.5 inches. So I marked 2 inches here. I later changed it to 2.5 inches. So make sure you mark 2.5 inches. Okay, so I'll start sewing from this 2.5 inches down to the hem. Okay, I've done that. So I started sewing from 2.5 inches from the edge. I sewed on ½ inch down to the hem, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to trim and notch all through. As you can see, this underbust joining are aligned. So I'm going to bring it inside out this way and make sure I iron it properly. I've done that. and this is how it came out. Now I am going to be joining the front and the back piece together, starting from the shoulder. So I'll pick one of the back piece, that is the fabric. I'll place the right side this way, and I'll be joining the shoulder also on the fabric of the front piece, as you can see, and I'll turn it over and I'll be joining the lining. Placing the right side, I'll join the other shoulder, and I'll also join the side seam separately on the lining and the fabric. On that, I've joined the shoulder and side seam, as you can see. So you can use any side as the good side and the wrong side. Now I'm going to measure round the waist. So what I have here is 39 inches and my actual waist circumference is 36 inches. I am going to overlap it this way with 1 inch and I'll pin it down. I'll go ahead and sew round, and I'll make sure all the stitches are aligned. I've done that. I've joined the waist by 1 inch and I overlapped this part, as you can see, and I ensured all the stitches are aligned. So after overlapping, make sure this underbust joint area are aligned. This is how it is going to come out. The next thing I'm going to do is to attach the collar. I've gone ahead to cut out the collar, adding 1/2 inch round. So from the pattern, remember I marked 1/2 inch in from the neck depth. So from the 1/2 inch to the edge of the pattern, that is 2 inches. And I've added 1/2 inch for sewing allowance already, that is 2.5 inches. I'll be joining by 1/2 inch this way, and from the 1/2 inch I'll mark the 2 inches from the pattern. So it's as though I am marking 2.5 inches. I'll also mark the 2.5 inches on this part. Starting from this 2.5 inches, I'll be sew by 1/2 inch down to this other part of the 2.5 inches. I've done that, as you can see. So this other part of the collar, I'll be joining on the neckline. So I'll go ahead and trim and notch. I'll bring it inside out and make sure to iron properly. I've done that. Now I'll be attaching it to the dress. So the first thing I'll do is to notch the midpoint of the collar. Fold it this way and mark the midpoint, and I've also marked the midpoint on the back piece of the dress. So this is the good side, as you can see. So I'll be attaching the collar on the right side of the fabric, as you can see me do. I'll pin down the midpoints this way. I'll also be joining the good side of the lining and the good side of the collar this way. So from the armhole, I will turn it to the good side this way, as you can see. So the collar is in between the lining and the fabric, and the good sides of the lining and the fabric are facing each other. Okay, so you can pin it down first if you don't know how to do this. So I'll pin it all through. So this is the other 2 inches I sewed on the bodice earlier. Now this other 2 inches I sewed on the collar is going to end on these 2 inches I sewed on the bodice, if that makes sense. I'll pin it down and turn it to the right side so you can see how it is going to come out. So this is how it is going to come out. So you can just pin it down first before you sew. Okay, now I am going to turn it back to the wrong side. I will sew by 1/2 inch round. I've done that. I'm going to trim and notch before I turn it inside out. So this is it, guys. This is how beautiful it came out. Make sure to iron properly. So the next thing I'm going to do is to measure round the waist. So I'll measure around the waist, and what I have here is 38 inches instead of 36 inches. So this is my new waist measurement because this dress is not going to have a zipper, so I'm going to leave it that way. Remember, the dress is going to pass through the head, so the 2 inches is going to make up for that. Now, to cut out the lower part of the dress, I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into 4. I'm cutting out the front and the back piece. Now I'll mark quarter of my new waist measurement and 1 inch for side seam. We're marking the full length of this dress. Remember, on the upper part I used 16 inches. I'll place the 16 inches on the waist this way, and I'll mark the full length, which is 35 inches plus hemming allowance. After doing that, on the hemline I'll mark quarter of my hip circumference, which is 11 inches. I'll be adding extra 3 inches to that is 14 inches, and 1 inch for side seam, that is 15 inches, and I'll connect it this way, cut it out, adding ½ inch on the waist for sewing allowance. These are both the front and back pieces. I'll place the right sides this way, and I'll join the side seam and also hem. I've done that. I've joined the side seam and I've also hemmed. Now I'll be marking the guidelines for my tulle. I'll mark the ½ inch I added earlier. So from this ½ inch, I'll measure to the hem. I have 18 inches here. So I'll divide this 18 inches by the number of layers of tulle that I want to make. You can use 4 layers, 5 layers. So I'll be using 4 layers, and I'll divide the 18 inches by 4. That is 4.5 inches. So I'll mark the 4.5 inches this way. And I am going to extend the lines. I'm marking the guidelines on the right side of the fabric. So I've done that on the front and the back piece, as you can see. Now I'll go ahead and cut out the tulle. Using 5 yards of tulle, I folded into 8. Okay, and I've marked my starting line. So I'll be using 8 inches length for the tulle. I'll go ahead and mark the 8 inches this way. So I'll mark the 8 inches all through the 5 yards, and I'll do the same thing on the other 5 yards, and I'll cut it out. I've done that on all of the 10 yards, and these are the tulle. Now I am going to be placing 1, 2, 3 pieces together, and I'll make double gather stitch on ½ inch all through the 5 yards. So for the width of the gathers, I am going to measure round each guidelines this way and times it by 2. So I've gone ahead to make my gather stitch on the tulle. I'll ensure that the edges are equal, so you can go ahead and trim that out. Now I'll pick both ends of the thread and make my gathers. After doing that, on each layer, I am going to join the edges this way, and I'll sew by ½ inch like this. And I'll place each layer on the guidelines this way and sew by ½ inch directly on the guideline. So this is the part I joined by ½ inch on the tulle. I am going to place the wrong side on the right side of the fabric this way. aligning the side seam and the 1/2 inch I joined on the tool. I'll sew by 1/2 inch on the guideline this way. This is the first layer. I've attached it, and also I've attached the second layer, the third layer, and now the fourth layer on the waist. Now I'll be joining the upper and the lower part of the dress. So I'll place the right sides this way, aligning the side seams, and sew round by 1/2 inch. I've done that. I've joined the upper and the lower part, as you can see. So make sure to serge round the waist. To cut out this pointy shoulder sleeve, I'll be using my basic sleeve. So this is my basic sleeve. I have a detailed video on how to draft a basic sleeve. I'll put the link on the description box below. So I'll mark out the midpoint of the sleeve this way. I'll be using the splash and spread method. So from the midpoint here, I am going to mark 2 inches, 4 inches, and 6 inches this way. And from this point, I'll mark 2.5 inches space. And from the 2.5 inches, I'll mark 1 inch and 2 inches. I'll do the same thing here, mark 2.5 inches, and from the 2.5 inches, I'll mark 1 inch and 2 inches. Now I'll connect this 6 inches to the 2 inch, 4 inch to this 1 inch, then 2 inches to this 2.5 inches, as you can see me do. And then I'll cut through the lines, leaving about 1/4 inch on the edge. I am going to label 1, 2, 3 using another pattern paper. I'll place it on top this way and do my splash and spread. I'll use my pin to secure it. I used about 4 inches space on this part. So on this other part, I'll space by 1 inch. I'll also be spacing by 1 inch on this part. So I've used my sellotape to secure it. As you can see, I am still maintaining my armhole measurement. I'll connect it this way and cut it out. So this is what it looks like. I am going to fold it this way. So I'll be cutting it out on my fabric on fold. I've done that. So my fabric was not enough to cut out a long sleeve, so I cut out a 3/4 sleeve, and I've ironed an interfacing for extra support. I'll go ahead and join this part by 1/4 inch. So from the folded edge, you can go down by 1 inch and slant the shoulder if you don't want it to come out too pointy on the shoulder. So I've done that. I've joined the side seam, hem, and this is the 1/4 inch. I am going to notch this way and bring it inside out. So this is what it is looking like. Now I'll go ahead and attach my sleeve. I've done that, and this is how beautiful it came out. Next thing I'm going to do is to attach a press button. Okay, and that is it. We have come to the end of this tutorial. If this was helpful, kindly give this video a thumbs up, click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.